Quit looking at me, Grim.
I ain't looking at you.
I've had it looking at your ugly face.
Get off my back, rubber man. Your puss ain't so hot either.
So apparently, some of the episodes of this program have been a little bit long for some people, a little lengthy. Well, to them, I have but one thing to say.
I was sent in a capsule for a place far from here, and I came here for one reason: to attack and to keep coming. Not to ask, but just to give. Not to want, but just to send. Send the power of the job down everybody's throat in the Therion forums until you get sick of it. And you're gonna get sick of it, because once this freak of nature starts swelling, there's nothing stopping the power of the job. You're gonna listen to these fucking things every week, where I give academic analyses of metal records, and you're gonna fucking like it. You're gonna go out and buy all these fucking albums and stop listening to faggot shit and get in the gym and fucking drink kombucha. Listen, you fucking communist pussy. You might ask, what should I do? How do I prepare myself for the coming of the job? Should I do squats until my kneecaps shoot out my eye sockets? Should I jerk off with both hands until I pull my penis off with such force that it rips the space-time continuum? No! You just need to sit here and listen to this fucking podcast before I come over to your house and kick your ass so hard that your fucking grandparents feel it. Hulk Hogan.
Well, I think that clears up any confusion. So anyways, new edition of Poser Watch this week. I found a website, a blog somebody brought to my attention called Your Favorite Band Sucks. It does a podcast, and on the newest episode it's called Slayer Sucks, posted on May 10th by somebody named Tyler. Have you ever known a Tyler that wasn't an asshole? I don't think so, and neither have I. So they say, what makes a band the heaviest metal band ever? Unless it's ridiculous satanic imagery, muddy production, subpar musicianship, stupid lyrics, and releasing the same album over and over for militant fans, Slayer doesn't have it. Every music fan who ever voted for Rain in Blood to be on a list of the best metal albums ever should lose their job effective immediately. Honestly, if they had any self-respect, they'd resign. That's what Slayer is finally doing after raking it in for years as the most overhyped metal band in history, retiring. And to that we say, good, Slayer sucks. So it should be obvious to anybody, those points are all easily refuted, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt and decided to listen to the podcast. And here's what I was greeted with in about the first 30 seconds.
That's my blast beat with my tongue. Ew.
And I was like, oh, I see what happened here.
Oh, those guys are fags!
So there might be a Slayer extravaganza / refutation of this shitbox podcast at some point, but it would run a little bit too long, and I already had an idea for the show this week, so we'll have to put that off until next time or sometime in the future. Slayer extravaganza coming soon to a hate bus near you. So anyways, this week I wanted to talk about the band Therion, who are sadly overlooked in the annals of death metal history. They were around in the late 80s / early 90s in Sweden, the same time as all of the other famous Swedish death metal bands. Stuff like Entombed, Dismember, Grave, that kind of thing, for whatever reason, and we'll get into some of those reasons in a bit. But for whatever reason, they get a short shrift out of all the founding Swedish bands, but I think they might actually just be the best one. So they're of interest to listeners of this program because a girl smitten and starstruck with Mr. Varg Vikernes at one point mailed a bomb to the main guy from Therion's house, which I find a bit strange. If you were going to mail a bomb to a certain Swedish death metal musician's house, you'd think you'd go after one of the more normie tier bands like Entombed or whatever. But anyways, doesn't make sense to bomb Therion's house because in many ways they're sort of the burzum of Swedish death metal and how they experiment with layers of sound and really long, involved songs. So they start out in 1990, 1991 with a full-length called Of Darkness, which has a really cool cover that they got rid of for the reissue and just replaced with some kind of boring star or something. I don't know why they did that, but it's actually about to be reissued with the original cover, so go and get that if you don't already own the album. Otherwise, just be glad with what you have. Don't fucking give labels money just for reissuing old albums you already own. That would be a very silly thing to do.
Miniru, ha? Miningala, Minishil.
That said, if it's remastered by like Dan Swano or something, I'll probably buy it. Whatever. Anyways, Of Darkness, really good album. It has a lot of different subgenres of extreme music happening at the same time. There's bits of 80s black metal, bits of grindcore, bits of thrash, and definitely a lot of death metal, but done in a pretty unique and interesting way, especially for a debut album from a very young band, as you will now hear on the song Megalomania. So yeah, great guitar sound as to be expected for a Swedish death metal band recording in the 90s at Sunlight Studios with Thomas Skolsberg. Here we go. Excellent kind of thrashy riff. So a lot of groove to it. The drums have a weird sound to them because the toms are actually like electric. And now we're getting into the riff change-ups. They're very good at stacking a lot of riffs together. Because think of how far we are into the song and they've already done like 3 or 4 riffs. Here we get into a bit of the grindcore, which is very fast. But like all really good grindcore, there's still discernible riffs going on. Then we're going to get into a really nasty thrash riff in a second. Also, vocals from Christopher Johansson. Very savage. He's kind of like the leader of Therion. So yeah, really great stuff. Nothing rocking the boat quite yet for 1990s death metal, but on other songs you can see them start to get into their signature sound of very weird, dark, and complex death metal with a lot of layers to it. So here's the song Time Shall Tell, with a very eerie lead guitar intro. And you'll hear some of the layers I was talking about. And the positively ghastly vocals fit very well here. The first place I heard the song was actually on the Pentalgia compilation by MBR Records, which is very good. Track that down if you can. But you can hear the different layers of spooky melody going on that made it stand out when this album came out in 1991. And also today, you don't hear a lot of death metal bands doing that kind of layered atmospheric stuff. This style came to fruition on their second and, in my opinion, best album, although their first 3 are all essential, Beyond Sanctorum, which Daniel Eckeroth in his book Swedish Death Metal says has better production than the first one, which I disagree with. I think the first one has a much more brutal sound to it, and also has somewhat boring riffs. And again, I disagree. I think that the reason that some of these riffs might not stand out as catchy is because they're specifically designed to work in the context of the song. This isn't a record that'll immediately grab you by the balls. I remember the first time I heard it on Brett Stevens. He put it on his website for like top 10 death metal albums, and I was like, why is this one on here? This one isn't that great. But the more time you give it, the more rewards it gives you, and now it's probably one of my favorite death metal albums. It's got very classical approach to the composition, which I will now demonstrate with the song Cthulhu, the third song on this album. So very dark intro, which is to be expected for a song about an H.P. Lovecraft character. So you see what they're doing here is they're playing that same intro riff, but doing it at different cadences. This is an old progressive trick, according to Dan Svano from Edge of Sanity, who pioneered it on the second Edge of Sanity album. But it's also something that happens a lot in romantic classical music, especially, as well as Baroque music with the variations. So same riff, but completely different feel because of how the drums have changed. But they're going to change it up right around now. And there's a little bit of Voivod-style dissonance. And you're going to get into those layers I was talking about earlier, right around now. So you got one guitar doing a very spastic Voivod thing over the other guitars doing melodic stuff, which gives you an overall dissonant, disturbing atmosphere as the song slowly starts to unravel right here. But fret not, for Therion will tie all of this back together in a grand melodic tapestry in a way that only they can. Now we're talking. Look at this black metal ass riff. Perfect stuff. And now we get into some texture experimentation, utilizing negative space, spooky lead guitar, and a repetitive bass line that's keeping everything together. Actually, maybe this album does have better production than the first one. I don't know. It's not as brutal and in your face, but it's a little bit more nuanced. So yeah, Cthulhu, really great song. This whole album's full of great songs. Symphony of the Dead is like one of the best death metal songs. I feel like I say that a lot about Therion, but that's because they're really great. My favorite song on this album is called The Way.
Spit on the unbeliever boy. Spit on Bolas. Why are you running? Why are you running? Why are you running? Why are you running? Why are you running?
Which is 8 minutes long, but never gets boring, has a lot of really cool parts in it. It's sort of death metal's answer to Merciful Fate's Satan's Fall off of the Melissa album from 1984. But anyways, the third Therion album comes out. It's called Symphony Massis Ho Drakon Ho Megos. On this one, you can hear how Therion was really getting heavily into like occultism, so maybe a topic of discussion for Torso's Diablos 88 podcast at some point. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. They probably already have covered, Le Dragon Rouge and everything already, and I just haven't heard it yet. But anyways, this album, really great, as you would expect from an album with, once again, really sick cover art. On this one, they went even crazier with the layers, the strange, atmospheric type things. You can hear this on the song Dark Princess Nama. So check out the weird walking bass line on this one. Layers of sound we have going, with the clean guitars, the distorted guitars, and the bass all interacting in a very complex and intricate way, with lots of big open chords. So like I said, they're sort of the Burzum of Swedish death metal in that regard. And then some perfect lead guitar. Lead guitar in Therion is less an opportunity for the guitars to show off and more a herald of the chaos that is to come. So when they're going to introduce some new stuff, they usually will lead in with a melodic lead guitar like this to let you know that something big is coming. The vocals on this album might be a turnoff for some. They're sort of in between singing and growling, and they might be a bit of a disappointment for those who enjoyed Christopher's earlier vocal performances, but I'm okay with them. They remind me a bit of what Sentence did on their Amok album, which is another underrated album that you should check out. Maybe I'll do a thing on it sometime. Now we're here at the tempo change, as we've moved out of the atmospheric metal and we're entering the realms of the brutal, as signified by the changing drums and the palm muting. This album is sort of like a, Wesley Willis might call it a hell ride. It's a journey through a phantasmagoria of sounds as you fall deeper into the occult metal abyss. So now we're in a thrashy riff. This part coming up is going to be super weird, a bit of a descent. Here we go. Watch the fuck out. Oh god, that's excellent. Look how smooth these transitions are as they bring layers of sound in and out. Oh my god, those keyboards are really well done too. Nothing's cheesy here apart from maybe some of the vocals. It's all very well done and tasteful. Unfortunately for Therion, after this album came out, they all died in a tragic bus crash. Incidentally, this was the same bus crash that killed all the members of Sepultura after the Arise album. Even though Ho Drakon Ho Megas came out like a few years after that one. It was a temporal space loop or something. Or it could be me rationalizing that Therion got really like dumb after their third album. Ironically, a lot of people that would otherwise be into Therion's early stuff ignore it because of the later shit where they got very pretentious and decided, oh, we're symphonic, and everybody's like, ooh, it's so progressive. And they like shat all over their earlier material, even though their earlier material is like way more complex. This seems to be a problem with a lot of quote unquote symphonic metal. Septic Flesh did this too, where they supposedly got more symphonic, but really just meant they put in more keyboards, simplified the guitar riffs, and made everything very ostentatious without a lot of substance. So yeah, that's Therion. Check out the first 3 albums, avoid the later stuff. You know, I'm glad that they're making money touring off of that, given that they recorded 3 of my favorite albums, but the later stuff, not so much. See you guys next week.
Exit stage left! Exit stage right! There is no place to run! All the fuses and the exit signs